The servant leadership, Robert K. Greenleaf of 1977 coined the paradoxical term servant leadership. Paradoxical means it is impossible o mahirap maunawaan dahil naglalaman ng dalawang magkasalungat na katotohanan o katangian. How can one be a leader when he or she is servant? That's the common thinking. But the paradox is Greenleaf's deliberate and meaningful way of emphasizing the qualities of a servant leader. He describes the servant as servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve first. Then, conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. That person is sharply different from one who is leader first, perhaps because of the need to assuage an unusual power drive or to acquire material possessions. The leader first and the servant first are two extreme types. Between them, there are shadings and blends that are part of the infinite variety of human nature. The difference manifests itself in the care taken by the servant first to make sure that other people's highest priority needs are being served. The best test and difficult to administer is, do those served grow as persons? Ang mga pinaglilingkuran ba ay lumalaki bilang mga tao? Do they while being served become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? Sila ba, habang pinaglilingkuran, ay nagiging mas malusog, mas matalino, mas malaya, mas nagsasarili, mas malamang na maging mga tagapaglingkod? And what is the effect on the least privileged in society? At anong epekto sa pinakakakaunting pribilehiyo sa lipunan? Will they benefit or at least not be further deprived? Makikinabang ba sila o hindi bababa sa higit pang pagkakaitan? The first desire of the servant leader is to serve. But how? By leading. We often hear the term public servants to refer to appointed and elected officials of the government to emphasize the fact that they are indeed a servant of the people. Their first duty is to serve, and in serving, they lead. They don't think of their power as leaders first. If they do, they tend to become more conscious of their importance felt over their conscious of their power over their constituents and tend to impose that power or make their importance felt over their constituents and forget that if ever they are given power, it is to serve their people. Someone said, power corrupts. And I need it does when leaders think first of their power and forget the very reason why such power was given, example to serve. A servant leader focuses primarily on the growth and well-being of people and the communities to which they belong, while traditional leadership generally involves the accumulation and exercise of power by one at the top of the pyramid. Servant leadership is different. Ang isang pinunong tagapaglingkod or servant leader ay ang pangunahing nakatuon ay sa paglago at kagalingan ng mga tao niya at mga komunidad kung saan sila nabibilang. Samantalang ang traditional na pamumuno or the traditional leadership ay karaniwang nagsasangkot ng akumulasyon at paggamit ng kapangyarihan ng isa sa tuktok ng piramid. Iba ang pamumuno ng tagapaglingkod. So for example, sa isang linyahan, ang isang pinunong tagapaglingkod ay siya ay ang nasa hulihang linya. Dahil tinitignan niya ito at ginagabayan niya ang kanyang mga tao upang lumago ang kanilang komunidad. Samantalang ang traditional na pamumuno or the traditional leadership, sa linyahan sana siya ay ang nauuna. Kumbaga, siya ang sinusunod ng kanyang mga tagapaglingkod. And There are quotes or verses from the Bible that the greatest teacher said, "And whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave." From Matthew chapter 20 verse 27, ang sino mang nagnanais na mauna sa inyo ay dapat na maging alipin ninyo. Second, from Matthew chapter 23 verse 11, "The greatest among you shall be your servant." Ang pinakadakila sa inyo ay magiging alipin. Third, if anyone wants to be first, he must be the last of all and the servant of all. From Mark chapter 9 verse 35. Kung ang sino man ang nagnanais na mauna, dapat siyang maging huli sa lahat at lingkod ng lahat. For the fourth verse, from Mark chapter 10 verse 43, "You know how to peg how the pagan rulers make their powers felt, but it shall not be this way among you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." Alam mo kung paano iparamdam ng mapaganong tuntunin ang kanilang kapangyarihan. Ngunit, hindi magiging ganito sa inyo. Sa halip, ang sino mang gustong maging dakila sa inyo ay dapat na maging lingkod ninyo. From Mark chapter 10 verse 43. So Jesus Christ, his whole life was a life of service. In fact, he wanted to impress this idea of servant leadership by doing something dramatic in his last days on earth. He washed the feet of his apostles. Washing the feet was the work of a servant in his time. He wanted to etch in the memories of his apostles the idea that leaders are supposed to be foot washers. Leaders are supposed to be servants of all. Servant leadership seeks to involve others in decision-making, is strongly based in ethical and caring behavior, and enhances the growth of workers while improving the caring and quality of organizational life. For example, for the school head who acts as a servant leader forever, remembers that he or she is there to serve to his or her teachers, the students, the parents, and etc., and not the teachers, learners, parents to serve him or her. So for the transformational leadership, Robert Kennedy once said, "Some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not." Transformational leader is not content with the status quo and sees the need to transform the way the organization thinks, relates, and does things. Sinabi ni Robert Kennedy na nakikita ng ilang mga tao ang mga bagay kung ano sila at nagtatanong kung bakit. Nananaginip ako ng mga bagay na hindi pa nangyari at nagtatanong kung bakit ito hindi pa nangyayari. Ang transformational leader ay hindi kontento sa status at nakikita niya ang pangangailangang baguhin ang paraan ng pag-iisip, pag-uugnay at pag-iisip ng organisasyon. The transformational school leader sees school culture as it could be and should be, not as it is, and so plays his or her role as a visionary, engager, learner, collaborator, and instructional leader. As a transformational leader, he or she makes positive changes in the organization by collaboratively developing new vision for the organization and mobilizing members to work towards that vision. To do this, the transformational leader combines charisma, inspirational leadership, and intellectual stimulation to introduce innovation for the transformation of the organization. So for the sustaining change, for reforms to transform, the innovations introduced by the transformational leader must be institutional and sustained, or else that innovation is simply a passing head that loses its flavor after a time. A proof that an innovation introduced has transformed the organization is that the result or effect of that change persists or ripples even when the transformative leader is gone or is transferred to another school or gets promoted in the organization. We feel most comfortable with our old pair or shoes. We like to live in our comfort zones, and so sometimes we don't welcome change. And yet, if we don't want change. So, marami sa atin ang mga ganito. Mas komportable tayo sa lumang pares ng ating sapatos. Kaya ang mga kabataan gustong-gusto na lang manirahan sa kanilang comfort zone. Kaya kung minsan hirap silang hindi nila matanggap ang mga pagbabago. At gayon pa man, kung gusto nating mapabuti ang paraan ng ating paggawa sa ating organisasyon or upang mas umunlad ang ating buhay, dapat handa tayong magbago. The transformational leader ought to deal with resistance to change to succeed. There will always be resistors to change to ensure that the innovation he or she introduces leads to the transformation of the organization. Gusto nating magbago at mas to have a better life. Minsan kailangan din nating tanggapin ang mga pagbabago. Dapat tayo ay maging mulat sa sustaining change upang tayo ay matuto sa buhay. Yun lamang po. So, that's all our topic. Thank you for listening.